So, game-defined habitations, developer-defined habitations rather, players being able to perhaps have their own landing site on Lorville, cool idea, but what about player-built housing? Now, originally, I was the idea of player built housing. We're going back before the Pioneer, before land claims, a long time ago. Originally, I was kind of opposed to the idea. I didn't like it, and for me, I think it was just these kind of PTSD flashbacks to Star Wars Galaxies and players building their homes, and in one place you'd see this neatly laid out base with all this machinery and all this stuff, and then right next to it it looked like some giant had come in and just literally vomited house components all over the place, and it just looked like a disaster area. But I've read a lot of the player comments and arguments in favor of, and I mean, realistically, the more I played games like Rust or Conan Exiles or certainly Ark, I started to really enjoy them, and I really dug it. I started to really dig the idea, and it's kind of opened up my own sense of creativity, certainly. And I kind of started thinking back to days even playing Minecraft and stuff like that. I was thinking, oh man, it could be really cool. But realistically, within the constraints of Star Citizen, within the time they have to do what they have to do, nothing that deep could realistically come about over the short term or even, be on the horizon. I mean, each of those games is a game unto itself, which requires its own development period. And there, you're just talking about building a base, adventuring in this little, world that they've created for you. It is obviously nothing of the scope and scale of Star Citizen. So trying to incorporate something like that would be akin to like trying to build another game while you're trying to build Star Citizen, which is just insanity. So while I do think the idea of habitations around Lorville, if that is indeed a thing, if landing sites are possibly taking our hangars, all the hangars that we've earned, and say put the asteroid hangar in Grim Hex. There's that large open kind of landing area underneath Grim Hex that just has that door sealing it off. Incorporating that into Grim Hex as the asteroid hangar certainly would be a cool idea, and I think there would be a lot of people who would be very receptive to that. I mean, especially if you were to come across and say, hey, you remember that thing that we were talking about? Those hangars that you got? Well, we're now delivering them. And you know what? We're not even going to charge for them because you already kind of paid for them when you bought your ship. So you know what? Here you go. Welcome to CitizenCon. Here's a big gift. Here's something that you didn't see coming, and we're just going to give it to you. I mean, you could do it that way. I think that would be the way to go. I mean, obviously, you could monetize it. Blasphemer! But, why pick a fight if you don't want to? But I think ultimately, even if it is within the confines of a very rigid and somewhat limited system, obviously player housing, players building their own bases, this is a thing that is coming. Right, we know that this is coming because they've already sold the ship, they've already sold the land. We know this is something that's going to happen. But I think properly implemented, that would ultimately be where most players would settle. That would be their kind of happy place, where they would kind of go, now I get to kind of, even if it's just with prefabricated, like a hangar unit, a fuel storage unit, an ammunition storage unit, a personal storage unit, and a living space unit, and you get someone with a Pioneer to come in and plunk down all these pieces for you and build them with a landing pad, and thank you very much, sir, have a good day, lay out a few defenses, boom, you're good to go. I think ultimately most players are probably going to end up there, so this would be a good interim thing, especially in areas where space is more crowded, where maybe someone wants to, say, live on Area 18 or live at Grim Hex or something like that. You could kind of connect them through the old hangar system and kind of bring those two spaces together. But ultimately, I think that it's going to be the base construction feature that is going to win out in the end. I mean, for me personally, I think the idea of going out there, I mean, certainly, like, let's say the player construction of the player base system, even in its basic implementation, let's say that it doesn't fulfill what I would want from that system. You could go further in the future and take it in some amazing directions. There are some cool things that you can do with that. I mean, certainly you could go out and you could say, you know what, let's say you're a hacker and you've got a herald and you're just looking for a place to hang your hat. Maybe you could take over a derelict comm array satellite, you know, one of those ones that we go in to flip off or flip on depending on the mission. And you could kind of park your ship right up next to that, put in like a little cheap landing pad, and you could kind of take that over. It's just something that was abandoned and left floating in space, and it's got all this communications hardware on it, so maybe that would be really desirable for a hacker. Or maybe there's another abandoned mining base just like Grim Hex that you and your org could take over, and maybe something where players could kind of come into conflict and they could fight over who controls, you know, red Imperial Hex or blue Imperial Hex or wherever, you know, these different bases, and whoever controls it, you know, they open up the landing site to players and maybe they get a certain amount of every transaction that goes through the station. There's a ton of different places and different ideas that you could implement here and a lot of freedom. And I think that the player basing system ultimately is going to fulfill that. Certainly HABs, all that stuff, cool for the game right now, certainly, but I think that in the future it's going to be the player basing that's really gonna take off. I mean, certainly I was originally not a player who was all that into those games, but then playing Conan Exiles recently, a few months ago, with some of the org members, I can certainly remember on more than one evening building our base and all of a sudden turning to the other guy on Discord and saying, yeah, you know, I can't do this anymore. I gotta go to sleep. Every time I think I'm gonna get away from it, I just keep coming back going, one more thing. I gotta stop playing, and then going, oh my God, it's 4 a.m. and it's starting to get light outside. I have to go to sleep. Goodbye. I can attest to the addictive nature of those games, and certainly the freedom to express yourself is a real bonus. So yeah, I mean, if they do end up doing some kind of like generic habitations and you can kind of modify them a little bit, decorate them the way you want, all of that's really cool. But I think ultimately player basing is going to be the real big one, though. A game feature like that is kind of a game unto itself, so I don't expect it to be all that deep or all that amazing right away, just something that's going to be iterated on in the future. So we'll have to wait and see. Certainly, I hope to one day put down a little homestead on a rogue asteroid where hardly anybody can find it, but we'll have to wait and see what CIG has in store for us. Anyways, I've rambled on long enough. That's the show for today. Hope you guys enjoyed it, and thanks for watching.
Thank you for watching. So if you want to keep up with the latest and greatest in Star Citizen and Squadron 42's development, please follow us on our social media channels. See you soon.